so delighted to be here and to welcome all the Bruins in your life, my life. This is very exciting. You're in my kitchen. I'm in San Diego, and I'm going to get started with how to cook and shop on a budget and use fresh seasonal ingredients. And there's going to be a couple more sessions that we're going to do, but this one in particular is going to hit on the kind of what you need to do before you get into the supermarket, when you're in the market, whether it's a supermarket or even your farmer's market, because we're talking about fresh and seasonal food. And then we will make a very quick vegetable salad that has a little bit of pasta. And we're going to talk about the whole idea that my thinking about being in the kitchen and what I want you to take away as you go through this session is that it should be fun, and that there's really no mistakes that you can make when you're in the kitchen except to oversalt and burn something. And I mean really burn it. So you don't want to do those two things. But I want you to really kind of think about using a recipe as a guide. This particular salad that we're going to make is really, you know, it calls for rice. I didn't feel like making rice. I thought I would try something different. So there's going to be a different kind of pasta in here. And the whole idea is do what you have on hand. And if you don't have it on hand, think about what you love to eat and whether you like, if I've called for something that you don't eat, just leave it out. It's okay. The first thing I really want to say is what's healthy. What's healthy to me are foods that are the least processed. That means they are fresh foods, and we're going to talk about them. But when you find foods that are processed, and even though they particularly processed, and it's really when you're in the supermarket and you're going down the packaged foods that you spend a lot of money for, that may not be as tasty, because then we're going to talk about that in reading the ingredients, which is another thing you really want to pay attention to. And so the first thing that I really want to talk about before you get into the supermarket is there's lots of tricks. Pay attention to those supermarket ads. They're the ones that fill up either your mailbox, or you can find the coupons and all of those what's special online at your favorite market. Many of these markets, whether they're, you know, the Bonds, the Albertsons, whomever, have their own online coupons, and you can actually download them. You probably are aware of all of that, but pay attention. Make a list. Think about what you are going to be eating for the entire week, or however you want to go shopping. Is your class schedule keeping you from buying food and then, oh my goodness, I look in the refrigerator and there is the rotting salad ingredients or things like that. So pay attention to, you have to kind of think about it a little bit, but really think about what it is that you're going to need in terms of fresh food that you might need as you go shopping. And obviously, if you make a list, that is important. Menu planning is one of the other things. You know, kind of think about it. How, again, it kind of falls into what I just said, but paying attention just a little bit so that it's not a grab and go where you may want to, the budget may not allow you to just grab and go that already finished salad that you could buy at Trader Joe's or in other stores. And those particular things that are already prepped, ready to go, can be expensive. They're one meal. It's $4, $3.99, depending upon what that meal is. I was just in Trader Joe's yesterday, and you know, just kind of looking to see what they've got. There's salads. There's all sorts of prepped food. And the things that you really want to pay attention to are those things that you can buy that might save you a little bit of time, but at the same time, they already are prepped. And I'm actually going to step over to my refrigerator for 1 second, because there's one thing that I meant to pull out. Oh dear, we lost it. Well, somehow lost in translation, lost in my refrigerator. are things that are already pre-cut. And there's a bag of onions that I bought at Trader Joe's yesterday. They are already chopped. So if time is of the essence and you really can't stand the idea of chasing an onion around a cutting board, then buy things that are already prepped. Trader Joe's, for example, I'm not doing an advertisement for Trader Joe's. It just happens to be that they have very accessible food that's very easy to use if you don't have time and you need chopped onion, chopped cauliflowers. There's an array of fresh fruits and vegetables that are already prepped. All you have to do is open the package and do whatever you're going to do with them. Now, when you're in the market, the things that I, as a $5 chef, that make me kind of cringe, and those are things that people use and think that they are saving time and or money. So these little items, these things that are 1 cup, 1 serving items, that when you read the label in terms of what are the ingredients, there's a zillion ingredients. This particular one you can hardly read, even with my glasses. This little item right here is $1.99 when it's not on special, and I bought it, it was $1.69. This is 1 serving, okay? Now, the same goes if this is rice-a-roni, there are all these products. Everybody thinks they're quick. The fact of the matter is it still takes 15 minutes it takes roughly 15 to 20 minutes to cook raw rice. It takes this, read the package. This is Annie's. Trader Joe's has their own version if you are into mac and cheese. Now, people have said to me over the many years that I've been doing this, oh my goodness, I don't know how to cook rice or lentils or whatever the item is. And here's the little trick that all those the people that put rice into bags, these are 2 that, again, Trader Joe's, but everybody does it. Right on the back, see this black right here, how to cook the rice. And if you have any, it's the basic recipe for each of the particular rices. So when in doubt, and if it's lentils, same idea. Here you go. It's right on the back. Do not forget to look on the back of the package, because they've spent time. They want you to buy this stuff. And the other part of it is, don't forget, if particularly, say, cooking rice might be, oh my goodness, I don't know how to cook rice. So you've got the rice and you're reading the instructions. If there was ever anything that came into my life that I absolutely, I always use, it is my rice cooker. And here it is. I've had this little baby for probably 30 years. Still makes rice. Just put it in, push the button, 20 minutes later, it's done. So if you don't own one, it's a really great thing, and many of them now, I'm sure, will cook other grains as well. So the farros and these other barleys and so forth. So you don't have to mess with, is it going to boil over or anything? Do it in a rice cooker, and generally you'll be very, very excited, and it's easy. Now, another thing about going to the supermarket that I have found that's pretty always, again, whether it's price over convenience, I'm always price conscious. So 5 pounds of organic russet potatoes. Now, you might think, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with 5 pounds of potatoes? Well, potatoes are great. You all have microwaves, and if you don't, you can throw one of these into even an oven if you're cooking other things. You can cut them up. You can put them in a soup. You can do things. And these save money, and then you've got something on hand. Hey, I've just come in from a class, and oh my goodness, I don't have time to make dinner, but wow, I can throw a potato into the microwave, and in 7 or 8 minutes, if it's still that way, I think, you can have a baked potato. And you can then add a salad that you probably have some kind of greens around, and you've got a light dinner. And there's millions of things that you can do with them. Don't be afraid to buy something that is like this in a bulk that actually keeps for quite a long time. So potatoes don't go bad. And if they do, and they get a little green around here, you just cut that off, and you've got a potato that you can mash. You can do a million things with potatoes. So those are some of the things that that I find. And a couple of other things I mentioned not buying things that are already processed. Well, there's a couple of things that I have found that I've become slightly sort of partial to. And again, those are things that I keep in my cupboard as my last minute, gee, I don't feel like cooking. Gee, I feel like something kind of Indian spiced or that has those flavors, but I don't feel like making all the herbs and spices that make something taste Indian. And just a couple of nights ago, I was in that kind of a mood, and I keep this. This one is Tasty Bite, and it's virtually the same as the Trader Joe's that you can buy in Trader Joe's. I believe they still, yeah, I'm sure they have them, and they're great because what they are is one, they're a meal, which gets me to, and also let's read the ingredients. All the ingredients on these are very straightforward. You know all the food, you know what they are. There's no funny things. There's water, potato, carrot, green peas, everything, and then the herbs and spices. You're not getting words that you can't explain, or you can't read, or you can't even, if you had to, that you can't spell and or pronounce. And those are the words that I stay away from when I'm reading a label, which is why I tend more towards food that is fresh and seasonal. So what did I do with this little number last couple of nights ago? It so happened that I had spinach. I had some fresh spinach that I had bought at my farmer's market, and I had finally gotten around to stemming it and cleaning it, because that was part of the deal with the farmer's market. It was not bagged, it was real, still had the roots on it. And I thought, wow, how can I make this go a lot further? And what am I going to add to it? Give it a little jazz. I think I pressed a clove of garlic into it. I gave it a little extra ginger because I had some. And this I made last for like 3 days, because I put a big handful of spinach in it, and I then it kind of steamed down, and I had meals that I made then and for breakfast or for lunch. Throw an egg into it. You can, there's a million things that you can do with things that are left over. While we're talking about things like these pre-prep things, on here, the serving size 2/3 of a cup, and the servings per container in this are about 2. Now, generally, if you looked at this, you would probably go, I could eat the whole thing. And that's where we get into saving money and paying attention to what your serving sizes are and what your portion sizes are. And there is a difference. So the serving size in here says 2/3 of a cup, but if in fact you're good and you ate the whole thing, you've now eaten probably about 350 calories rather than 120 per serving. So it's wise to think about, the portion, the serving. I think about it when I'm talking, when I think about meat and poultry, for example. We in the United States for so many years have thought of meat, for the longest time, a steak, or everybody gets their own, and which meant, a half a pound to a pound of meat because everybody's getting their own steak. I, over my years, have thought about the idea of actually taking one steak, making it go for 4 people. we don't need to be eating portions that are this grand. And it goes for pasta. It goes for many, many of the things that we tend to overeat on because our portions are like this. If you gave a portion of, a steak to Europeans, I think of the way Europe eats most of the time. And that is, if you go to someone's home or you're in a restaurant, a pasta is just, it's this. And so it's not like this, and it can be like this in many of our restaurants here in the States. Same thing with meat. I like to think of it as using meat as a condiment. Again, more vegetables, so that pound of steak that you might have bought, in which case now I can save money because I'm just buying one steak and maybe it was on special, or one chicken or whatever it is, because it was on special, so I can stretch my budget. But then that steak gets cooked and it gets sliced into thinner slices, and maybe a quarter to a third of a pound per person makes more sense, filled in with a lot of vegetables. So it's a way to rethink how you eat, and it's also a way to rethink what you how much you're spending when you go to the supermarket. So those are some of the things that I have thought about over my many years and found, I think, to be quite reasonable and also effective in saving money when you go to the supermarket. Erica, are there any questions so far?
Yeah, we actually do have a question in the chat. Someone asked if they have potatoes that have sprouted a little bit, are they still edible?
Well, and Erica can help me on this as well. Yes, if they've started to sprout, just cut off and just cut them off. Cut off the sprouted parts, peel them, and if there's any green, just be sure you're beyond the green. Is what I always do, and you just don't want to be eating the green. And the sprouts, they're not going to hurt you. Just cut them off. They're fine.
A similar question about garlic. When that starts to sprout, would you just remove the green part that's kind of in the middle, or? Yeah,
you can pull when you're in the midst of doing the garlic, same idea. And with onions, same idea. They can just pull out that green piece, and then go from there, because it's on its way to becoming another piece of garlic or onion. That's really what's going on. So, okay. So let's talk a little bit about what I have in my cupboard that makes my life much easier to deal with when I am in that mood of what am I going to eat tonight, because I either have just gone to the supermarket, but I have things that my go-to things, and it's quite a collection of things, because they're things that you can always think about as last minute or as tricks or whatever, to give a little burst of flavor to, or a little crunch or something to whatever you might be cooking. So olive oil is one of them. Anybody's good olive oil. Again, read the label. Where did that olive oil come from? I want it processed, and this one is product of Greece. Okay, it's Greek olive oil, product of Greece. Italian olive oil, be sure it says product of Italy. Many of the olive oils, when you're reading the label, can be mixed, or they will say, packed in Italy, packed in the United States. However, they might be olives from, I don't know, let's say Spain or other places. And so the idea being, I want the purest, I want the best. And this is just a regular, I use this as my cooking, I use this as my everyday oil. Now, for particularly, if you're doing some sort of a finishing oil that you might want it for, say, a salad, where you want a little bit more of a particular flavor of olive oil, then yes, I have ones that are not many, but I do have a few that are a little more olivey. This one is particularly just kind of, it doesn't jump in your face, which means I can use it for just about any kind of cooking that I want. Olive oils are not all created equal. And so it's important if you ever have a chance and you're at some place where you can taste different olive oils, because some are fruity, some have a little more acid taste to them. They can be a little more pungent. So those are things to pay attention to. Olive oils. So vinegars. Vinegars are my friend as well. And I have numerous vinegars. These are just a few, because sometimes I just want something that's a little bit different. So I have many more, but just a regular wine vinegar. This is rice vinegar, so it's a little bit lighter and a different kind of a taste to it. It's not so in your face, but it's quite good, and it's a little gentler. Also, good balsamic. Again, you know, there's expensive ones, and back to good old Trader Joe's, because I have to say they have done their homework when it comes to the products. And like I said, I'm not pitching for Trader Joe's, but it has become, along with my farmers markets, my go-to place, because I think their prices are fair. They go out of their way to find products that are as clean as possible, meaning that they are healthy and minimally processed and so forth. Even in their frozen food, the same idea. So pay attention to when you're going there. Soy sauce, yeah, again, I keep it around. Things that are always good is always have, you know, at least Dijon, some kind of mustard if you like it. If you don't, then don't have it. But olives, I think, you know, if you like them, find ones that are already pitted. And I may throw a couple of olives into this salad, even though I didn't put it on the recipe. And again, it's something that it gives a little bit of a punch. We're looking for punch and texture. And then there comes the herbs and spices. And so many of the herbs and spices, the basics that I have fresh are parsley, dill, cilantro, parsley, cilantro, dill, sometimes whatever is at my farmer's market, but a little of, you know, a little cilantro, a little parsley goes a long way, and it's always just a nice, if nothing else, you chop it up and throw it as a garnish, or you can use it in a particular recipe if something calls for fresh herbs. And this is the way I keep them. I put them in water and I keep them in the refrigerator. Some will actually work in a bag in your vegetable bin as well, in a plastic bag. But I found that I have better luck. And plus I can just grab as I go. So dried herbs and spices are a whole nother deal. And those are things that I have there's a drawer that I've just pulled out that is nothing but various herbs and spices. I have, you know, everything from cumin seed to coriander seed to red pepper, everything. So these are the things that I have available to me when I'm cooking. Now there are blends, and when I was in the supermarket, I found, well, this is Trader Joe's again, but this one I didn't have any chili seasoning, and so here it is. It's organic chili pepper, organic cumin powder, organic garlic powder, organic oregano, and there it is. So a little dash on this when you're cooking beans, when you're cooking, hey, put a little bit on that chicken if you're making chicken. There's numerous things to have when you just have the blend. I have, as I pulled up, things that are each separate herb and spice, but that's because sometimes that's what I'm doing, is to be able to, you know, it's a teaspoon of cumin seed and that's all I really need are the seeds. So The same thing, this was a perfect, they call it perfect pinch. This is salt-free. I look, when I'm buying my herbs and spices, I want salt-free because I don't want the extra stuff that goes into, again, salt-free. So here are the ingredients. Garlic, spices, including oregano, rosemary, basil, red pepper, orange peel, onion, paprika, and celery. So this is a blend that's probably a nice little perfect pinch to put in a salad dressing, just to give it a little jazz. I make my salad dressings. I don't buy bottled dressings because I tend towards the oil and vinegar things. Now, in my refrigerator, of course, I have mayonnaise. I have the other things that you can use to make salad dressings to make them at home. There's ketchup. You can make your own Thousand Island. My mother used to make it. My sister, that's all she would eat, was Thousand Island dressing. And it was Thousand Island that had ketchup and mayonnaise. And those two things mixed in. You can, there's pickle relish you can buy. There's all kinds of things that you can do when you have in your refrigerator and in your cupboard those few things that make your cooking go much, much quicker and easier. A couple of the other things that I always have around, because I truly believe in fresh, even though, yes, I have garlic powder, again, in my stash, because it's something that sometimes if you want a dry rub, if you're doing, barbecue, you might want, it'll call for garlic powder. And again, it's just, I don't use it a whole lot. I would prefer garlic rather than the fresh garlic rather than a powder. So I'm always amused, and I'm going to repeat it because you probably already know it, but when a recipe calls for a clove of garlic or 2 cloves of garlic, this is not a clove. This is a head of garlic. A head of garlic is made up of many of these, many, many cloves, okay? So know that when you buy, and it's bad manners if you go to the market and you see someone taking, because they thought they needed a clove of garlic for their recipe, and they've taken and pulled off a clove out of here. And so you see, I saw this actually in the market, what somebody was doing with celery, and I thought, this is really peculiar. So clove, head. Don't get them mixed up or you will have a very garlicky, unpleasant, unless you love garlic, which I do, recipe. Onions, I always have fresh onions around. It's one of my mainstays. I'm very partial to them. I like them. A little goes a long way sometimes, but they are important in terms of how your food tastes and how fresh your food tastes. And you don't need a lot. They last a long time. Mine stayed out on my counter in the back right here, and as do the garlic. And the other thing, this is a humongous one, but this is a shallot. And a shallot is somewhere between garlic and an onion. And many times I use shallots in my salad dressing because it has a nice flavor, but it's not so overpowering as a clove of garlic is, or as garlic is. And it's not so, I'm not sure what kind of onion, and gee, I just crunched on an onion. This is a nice in between, and many markets carry them. They're staples. They don't go bad. And to the question earlier, if they do start to sprout, you can use around them. If there's brown around them, if they start to get soft, you don't want to use them or open them up and see how far you might be able to use them. The same is true with onions, but I go through them pretty quickly. Let's see, what else do I have here that I love and I use all the time?
We have a couple questions too.
Oh, great. Let's do questions.
So one is, would you recommend regular olive oil or extra virgin?
Again, extra virgin is fine if it's just the pressing. This particular one is 100% extra virgin. I think it's probably a nicer one, but again, my point particularly is where it was pressed and the country of origin. And if it's pressed in the same place that it's packed, that's what I'm looking for. So this is Greek. It came from, it's cold pressed product of Greece. So I know that it wasn't coming from another place and then put into here, calling it Greek olive oil because they put half, they mixed it up or something. This is, I tend towards, yes, extra virgin. And that's pretty much what we find for the most part. But again, when you just kind of pay attention to the label and see, where it's from. And again, if you have a chance to taste it, because they are not created equal, that I can tell you. So you find one that you like, that isn't overbearing, and that it goes, I think you'll find, you find one that you like and kind of stick with it. Any others?
Yeah, there's one more. It says,
Yep.
what are the different types of onions used for? Can you use a red when a recipe calls for white, or yellow, and vice versa?
One of my biggest things, and you will see it in the recipe that we're going to make in a couple of minutes. An onion is an onion. Red has a particular flavor, and it has a particular look. Obviously, it's red. Green onions are we call them scallions here, or green onion. Scallion in the South is a whole other deal. It's not the same. I think it's actually a scallion. It's another. It's just another something, but you say scallion to it in the South, and it's not the same. This particular bunch of onions that I bought yesterday happened to be Vidalias from Georgia. So they are Vidalia sweet onions from Georgia. And I wanted to see how sweet they really were. And when I was cutting it up, it's not sweet, but it isn't like, oh my goodness, I just hit a white onion. It's going to make me tear up. So yet to answer the question, yes, they can all be substituted. An onion, it's the flavor that you're looking for. And when we get to this salad in a moment, you will see what happened when I started thinking about the salad and what I was willing to do, given now that shopping is not quite as easy as it used to be. You can't just run over. You kind of can, but it depends on how much time you want to spend standing in line or not standing in line, or some of the markets I've been able to walk into, no problem. So it just depends on timing and what kind of, just how you want to approach your shopping. So substitutions when it comes to onions are perfectly fine. Don't make yourself crazy. This is part of the whole idea of A, having fun in the kitchen, B, not being afraid to try something a little bit different, and just be able to allow your own taste to play into whatever that recipe is. Recipes, in my eyes, should be used as a guide. Now, if you're baking, they shouldn't be used as a guide. You have to follow the recipe. Otherwise, that cake will fall, or a million things, which is probably one of the reasons I don't do a lot of baking. I'm really good at chocolate chip cookies. I have great friends who do a lot of baking. They bring dessert when we've had dinner parties over the years. I am the imprecise, or the preciseness needed for cooking and baking is not my deal. My deal is being able to say to myself and to all of you to trust your own taste. If the recipe calls for 40 cloves of garlic and chicken, and you hate garlic, but you think maybe a little bit of garlic would do, then cut it back to 20, or don't use garlic. Use whatever the technique was. Put in an onion instead. There are ways to pay attention to what it is you love to eat, and trust your taste when it comes to when you're preparing particular foods. And so it gives you a little leeway to not feel so constricted about, oh my goodness, do I have to follow this recipe to the end? Most of the recipes that I've done over my years, they're pretty forgiving. And that means, as you're going to see, maybe we'll get into it just right now. This, I wanted to say one other thing about spices. Erica and I were speaking about it yesterday. There's a place, they are online, and it's called Penzies, and they have blends. They have them in small sizes like this. So if you're just starting and you think, oh, maybe I don't know, or I want to go give something a try. I was on their website yesterday. They're just starting to get ramped up again for doing all their mail order. They've been around for years and years and years, mail order. But Penzies is something for hard to find spices, because there's a lot of things that you don't necessarily trip on when you're in the supermarket either. So that recipe that I pulled up and that we are going to do, you will see, if you don't have to follow along on it, but I have called for everything that is probably not going to be in here. I do have peppers. I didn't have any red onion, but you know what? I just bought those cute little vidalias, and that's what I used, about a half of that onion. And I didn't have any broccoli, and I just really wasn't in the mood to go to the supermarket just for broccoli. Now, what I did have on hand was some sugar snap peas that I had bought when I was in the at my farmer's market on Saturday. And so I thought, well, why not? I'm looking for color. I'm looking for texture. I'm looking for, gee, what vegetables do I have on hand, and what can I do with them? And so we can start with the red pepper, because it's kind of easier enough. If you've not dealt with a fresh pepper, I cut it down in half. And here what I did was sort of half cut it. And what you're going to do is just pull out clean it up just a little bit, get the seeds out. And just give it a quick. Now, even cutting can be done in a way that, you know, do you want small pieces? I don't like having to spend a whole lot of time cutting. I want a salad that I can eat without having to cut it with a knife. That means food needs to be at least in quasi bite-sized pieces. So I wouldn't put a julienne, or this is not really a particularly good julienne, but strips like this, I would not put them in here, because that means it's going to be a big mouthful, and you really don't want that. So I'm going to cut them into probably thirds, and they're going in, because I want them texturally, and I want the color. And they're still a little chunky. And okay, same idea with the green onion. I'm sorry, the green pepper. This is not an onion. The green pepper, I'm going to make it just into biteable pieces. You know, they don't have to be perfect, but they just need to be easy to get. I talked about these are sugar snap peas. You can buy them in the market. These were fresh from the farmer's market. I happen to love them, and I think I sometimes also think that raw vegetables sometimes feel like you're chewing, you know, you can feel like a rabbit sometimes. I don't know, just depends. But these things raw are good, but I thought I blanched them. I basically cooked them for about 30 seconds in boiling water. I drained them, and then I just let them cool and ran some cold water over them so that they would not continue cooking. And numerous things can be done with them, because you can actually just cut them in half if you want, and then all the peas fall out. Or you can actually I think I would cut them this way. So again, they're going into, but these have a crunch, but they are not raw. And so what happened to the broccoli? Well, as I told you, I was looking in my refrigerator for what I had, and I didn't want to go looking for broccoli. So in the market, and why make a special trip when I had other vegetables that would work equally well. Okay.
Marcie, we actually have a question about the broccoli.
Okay. Sure.
So for the broccoli, would you steam it first?
Yeah, I personally would. I would do it with those because again, it's even when you go to a party and everybody's got raw broccoli and raw cauliflower, you're kind of chewing on it, feeling like either a rabbit or whoever eats raw vegetables like that. And so I personally, I happen to like steamed down or blanched just a little bit. Blanch meaning again in boiling water for about 30 seconds, just start to loosen it up a little bit, so it is not, I'm now eating raw vegetables. So I would do it with any of those harder vegetables like that. Some things, we're used to. We're used to carrots that we eat, raw, but in a smaller, cut up, they just tend to, it's something that we're used to. The same thing I did with a couple of stalks of celery. And I'm not going to put it all in. It feels like a lot. I did one. If you didn't feel like chopping, again, chasing around the cutting board, a carrot or carrots. Don't forget, everybody should have at least some basic idea of a grater in their stash, because it'll make your life very easy. So instead of chopping, just grate the carrot, and now you have yet another texture, and it's going to give a different look to the salad, because we've got a lot of things that look kind of the same, and so now we've got carrot two ways for the moment, but and then that Vidalia onion that I had chopped up. And I've chopped this about a half of an onion. And so that's the mainstay. You can put a tomato in. You don't want it to look like everything but the kitchen sink. So maybe not the tomato in this particular one, because we got a lot going on. But you could put the tomato in. If you like tomatoes, leave something else out. Again, it's a forgiving salad. The whole idea is it's built around the things that you like, not my taste. My taste is a guide for you to be able to figure out what you want to put in the salad. Now, I happen to love garlic, so there is one clove of garlic that I already put in here. My old television days of getting things prepped before I start. And I'm squeezing because, again, I get lazy. I really don't want to be chasing a clove of garlic around the cutting board just for one clove of garlic to go into a salad dressing. And this one, I'm using some lemon, which you can use. And you know what? If you don't have one of these things, which is a helpful idea, then your hands, clean, become the strainer, because the seeds will actually stay in your hand. And I have found that a lot of times squeezing a lemon with my hand is a far more enjoyable and functional way to get the juice out of the lemon. And here's the seeds. So, no mess, no fuss, no mess. It's kind of much different. And where did my 1 minute? Sorry about that. Thought I had it with me. I'm probably going to put another, that was only a half a lemon, so I'm going to use another half. It's going with a pinch of salt and pepper. And again, we're going to put a couple of tablespoons of olive oil in there as well. And depends on how lemony you want it, and a lot of times, even with the lemon juice, what I will do when we get finished kind of mixing this for the first round is I will give it a little bit of just a jolt of wine vinegar, because it has a punch to it. Or I also have in my stash apple cider vinegar, which is quite good, and I use it a lot as well. So, and all the vinegars, again, have a slightly different taste. Sherry vinegar I use for milder kinds of dressings, where I want a good flavor, but I don't want it so much in my face. And let's do a pinch of salt and some pepper. And sometimes I'm going to use these in a minute, but either a dash of mustard will give it a little bit of an extra kind of a jazz to it. Much. I mean, you know, again, if you hate mustard, don't use it. Just don't. But it's a good way to get flavor into a dressing that gives just a little bit of a punch behind it. And now, and mustard also is it helps emulsify the oil in the vinegar too. You'll see it starts to thicken up a little bit. I'm also a big fan of tasting your food as you're cooking. So it's important to so that has a lot of that's got a lot of lemon juice, and it's got a lot of punch, and it probably is not going to use any of that, any of the oil and the vinegar. But I am going to put in some herbs de Provence, just a pinch. And the herbs de Provence are kind of the French version of Italian seasoning or Mexican seasoning, only it is herbs de Provence, which is in the south of France. So it's generally very savory, and there's, you know, a little rosemary and thyme and those kinds of things, parsley, sage, rosemary and thyme, a little bit of that. But and I'm putting basically a pinch, because we don't need a lot, but you want it to give some flavor to, and that's it, to the dressing. And I'm going to bet that now, yeah, might put a little teeny bit more oil in. Well, it's okay. I like my things dressed lightly, because if you have a punchy dressing, you don't need a lot of dressing to get the flavor onto the food that you're doing. And this was really basically a couple of tablespoons of everything. So, and the last minute little flavor addition here is going to be, and it never looks like there's very much, but there is. So the pasta, we didn't talk about the pasta. We kind of ran through it a little bit, but when I was shopping yesterday, I thought, gee, maybe there's something different than just plain old rice, which we can always make. We saw the possibilities of rice, lentils, any of the grains that you love, farro, any of those. And I thought, well, this one is chickpea. That's, you know, garbanzo beans that Barilla has put together, and just don't cook. Well, I only cooked it for 4 minutes, and it was still a tiny bit soft, but softer than I would have wanted. But it makes for a nice substitution for your own salad. And let's see how. And this is a dressing that I would probably allow to soak in a little bit into the pasta. Here's the thing that would use. And this is why it's important to have things like olives in your stash. They're good for eating. They're also great for that last minute little punch and color. These are pitted calamatas. I'm going to just chop up. And that gives the little bit of kind of salty extra flavor that you might be, wanting to put in there. So you have a colorful salad that's got a lot of vegetables. It's got the pasta there. I cooked a half a box of that pasta, and it made 2 cups. So that's a lot of pasta. And this will, again, here we are with our portions versus serving. So a portion of this would probably, I don't know, cup and a half. This made probably a good, there's 2 cups, 3, 4, there's at least 4 to 5 cups in this salad that's finished right now. So that's one of the best ways, I think, to think about your food and to think about what's in your cupboard, and the herbs and the spices and all of those things. And and don't forget nuts. Nuts are another thing I have in my stash, because again, we're back to color and texture. So handful of nuts, I wouldn't put them here because we've got a lot of things going on, but on a salad, on a vegetable, just a few handful, not a few handfuls, a handful, just to give that extra little crunch. If you don't like nuts, or if you don't like walnuts, use another nut. Don't use nuts if you don't like them. But it's just another thought and another something of things that I have in my cupboard, in my refrigerator, that I know that I can go to where I don't have to leave the house to make food. And I think we've probably hit it in terms of our timing too. So
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Marcie. We actually have one question for you. Actually,
good.
So the first question is, do you have a recommendation for a beginner knife set or tutorial on cutting techniques or different knives? And the second question, will it be okay leftover with dressing on it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning the leftovers, because that was something I had in my mind to also mention. Those leftover steamed vegetables, yeah. Turn them into a salad. Don't be afraid. Turn them into, years ago, you could take a great mix of kind of not stewed down, but, vegetables that had been cooked, summer vegetables that works really well, and put them and make them into a fabulous sandwich, if you are talking about things like that, where you can, a little bit of oil and the vinegar, and they're kind of that, but they're on top of bread or in between bread. It's great. The knife I'm sorry, the knife question again.
Would it be okay if for the last couple of questions I sent them to you, only because just so we can do the nutrition portion? Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So whoever just asked the questions, I will make sure that I send them to Marcie, and we'll be in contact with you guys.
Okay, great.
So just to kind of go into the nutrition portion. So now that Marcie has shown us how to make a pasta salad, I want to discuss one aspect of the dish, the olive oil. You may have heard that olive oil is a good fat, but what does that mean exactly? Today, we are going to briefly discuss saturated fat versus unsaturated fats to assist in making that distinction. The general rule for fats is to increase the consumption of more healthful fats that are liquid at room temperature, oils are unsaturated fats, and decrease the consumption of more unhealthful fats that are solid at room temperature, fats are saturated fats. In addition to fats like butter, saturated fats can be found in foods like fast food and snacks. Here is an example of a food product, hot Cheetos, that is high in saturated fat. You can see that a 9.7 ounce bag of hot Cheetos has the same amount of fat as a little more than one whole stick of butter.
Ouch.
To student groups about hot Cheetos, many students eat one whole bag in one sitting. So you can see that the intake can go way up from eating one whole bag. Now that we have discussed saturated fats, let's take a look at unsaturated fat. Again, oils are a form of unsaturated fat. Unsaturated fat can also be found in foods like avocados, eggs, fish, and eggs. Omega-3s are a type of unsaturated fat, and fish is a wonderful source. In order to meet the recommendations for omega-3s, you can use the following takeaways. If you eat fish, 2 servings per week of salmon or tuna or other fatty fishes give you enough omega-3 fatty acids to meet recommendations. 1 serving is about 3 ounces or the size of a woman's palm. You can also choose canned salmon or tuna. You can flake them over salads, eat them with tomatoes or avocados, or mix them with cooked pasta or vegetables, like we did today. If you don't like to cook fish, order it if you eat takeout. If you don't eat fish, choose plant sources of omega-3 such as walnuts, ground flaxseed, avocado, or canola oil. 1 handful of walnuts 3 to 4 times per week can meet your omega-3 recommendations. And that's our great chopped and sprinkled in salads, and oatmeal or breakfast cereals, or you can serve them as a meat replacement in stir fries. So that is the quick kind of nutrition overview of saturated and unsaturated fats. And our next class with Marcie is going to be May 26th from 4 to 5. And thank you again so much, Marcie. This was so great. Again, I'm really excited that we're able to kind of share these tips and very excited for the next class.
Great. Can we preview what the next class is, or do we want to keep it a secret?
I think we want to keep it a secret.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. So I want to, so that's the end of our class today. And please feel free to email me, guys, if you guys have any questions at all. And we'll be sure to be in contact. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you all.